Breaking news this Friday night. Tariff talks terminated, while the U.S. president has suddenly ended trade negotiations with Canada.
It's not going to work out well for Canada.
What happens now and the cautious optimism? New claims Israeli troops are being ordered to shoot at Palestinians near aid sites in Gaza. Israel's staunch denials. Fired.
It's a guy that the Toronto sports community loved.
Why fans are crying foul over the dismissal of the Toronto Raptors' longtime president. Plus, the contentious Canadian crosswalk that finally reopened after decades.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Anthony Robart.
Good evening and thank you so much for joining us. We begin tonight with a dramatic reversal from the U.S. president that could have major implications for Canada. Donald Trump has abruptly broken off trade talks, blaming Canada's plan to impose a digital services tax on big American tech companies starting on Monday. And he's threatening new tariffs as well. Now, Trump's decision breaks a commitment he'd made to Prime Minister Mark Carney at the recent G7 summit to work towards easing a series of punishing tariffs by mid-July. David Akin is following the developments. So, David, what is at the heart of this?
Well, Anthony, ever since the Canadian digital services tax became law back in 2023, Canada had been warned that it was going to ruffle some feathers in the United States. And after Canadian officials informed the U.S. Friday, this afternoon, that it would finally start collecting the 3% tax on income that American tech companies earn from Canadian customers, well, Trump acted.
Economically, we have such power over Canada. I'd rather not use it, but they did something with our tech companies today.
The Canadian digital services tax would have been applied retroactively, putting about $2 billion into Ottawa's treasury. But Trump believes foreign governments should not be taxing American companies.
They were foolish to do it. And so I said, we're going to stop all negotiations with Canada right now until they straighten out their act.
But the Canadian view has been that a digital services tax, or DST, should be part of a broader discussion about cross-border trade and tariffs. And until that happens, Canada is moving ahead with its own plans.
This was voted by Parliament, so we're going ahead with the DST.
Trump is insisting he'll simply tell Canada within a week how much Canada will have to pay to do business in the U.S. Of course, that tariff will not be paid by Canadians. That's not how tariffs work. They'll be paid by Americans who buy Canadian goods and services. Nonetheless, making Canadian goods and services more expensive in the U.S. will hurt businesses and workers on this side of the border and could spark increased retaliatory tariffs by Canada on U.S. goods. That said, those closely watching the Canada-U.S. trade talks seem to think this latest tempest from the White House will blow over.
I do think that it is not necessarily unusual to expect that we're going to have bumps along the road. And I am confident that this will eventually work out.
Indeed, the PMO simply issued a statement saying Canada will continue to engage in these complex negotiations with the best interests of Canadian workers and businesses. The Prime Minister did not speak today to President Trump. Anthony.
David Akin in Ottawa. David, thank you. Well, even before Trump's announcement today, the economic outlook for Canada was showing signs of weakness. Statistics Canada reports that the country's GDP contracted by 0.1% in April, led by declines in the manufacturing as well as export sectors. As Anne Gaviola explains, the risk of a recession is on the table.
Manufacturing has taken a hit 3 months in a row. And in April, exports took it on the chin as Trump's tariffs on steel and aluminum took hold and increased. Tariffs were levied on some finished vehicles, and it's not over yet.
We still face the largest tariff shock from our largest trading partner in modern time. So there's going to be a hit.
The toll of tariffs is showing up in the data. A stagnant labor market, a pullback in household and business spending. A pickup in concern about Canada's wildfire situation also weighing on households.
That's another thing that leads to, a lot of consumers being worried, which ultimately reduces their amount of spending. It's leading to a slowdown in the housing market as well.
And yet, despite all the continuing uncertainty, there's a sense that the bite of tariffs may not be as bad as previously feared. There were lots of short-term economic boosts in April, from a federal election to a bump in spending during NHL playoffs.
Ottawa is poised to spend quite a bit of money to support the economy and to build out defense and infrastructure. And I think with that as a backdrop, I'm a little bit hesitant to say that the worst is over, but there's certainly the possibility that that's about as bad as it gets.
Though some, like business consulting firm Deloitte, are calling for a mild technical recession this year, not everyone's convinced.
We don't see a full-blown recession.
Markets and investors are also reflecting a lot of optimism.
Financial markets are looking through all this uncertainty, whether it's trade or geopolitical, and looking towards a better economic outlook over the next 18 months.
The caveat, and it is a big one, is that our economy and the world's largest ones aren't thrown more major curveballs. Anthony?
And thank you so much. That's Anne Gaviola in Toronto for us. The U.S. Supreme Court delivered a major victory to the Trump administration today. The split court ruled that individual judges lack the authority to grant nationwide injunctions, which have hampered his presidential agenda for months. But it's unclear what this means for many of Trump's biggest policy goals, including restrictions on birthright citizenship. Jackson Proskow reports on the legal wrangling.
With the stroke of a pen, President Donald Trump has wielded executive power at a record pace.
So this is a big one. This is a big one, right? Very important.
He has attempted to unilaterally end birthright citizenship, fire federal workers en masse, and remove deportation protections for migrants. Those actions have repeatedly been blocked by nationwide court injunctions issued by lower court judges.
These injunctions have allowed district court judges to be emperors. They vetoed all of President Trump's power, and they cannot do that.
Injunctions have impacted presidents from both parties. In a 6-3 ruling, the Supreme Court decided district court judges may have exceeded their power and limited the ability for judges to issue future nationwide injunctions.
I'm grateful to the Supreme Court for stepping in and solving this very, very big and complex problem.
Dissenting liberal justices warned the ruling would allow a president to violate the Constitution, calling it an existential threat to the rule of law. Legal experts say it raises the bar for the lower courts, but does not end their ability to issue injunctions.
Here the court has said, not that they're never appropriate, but that you have to show that they're necessary to provide relief to the parties that are appropriately before the court.
The White House says it plans to press ahead immediately with more executive actions, while those opposed to Trump's agenda are already planning to seek new injunctions using the new standard. Notably, the court did not rule whether Trump can proceed with his plans to end birthright citizenship or go ahead with his other executive actions. Those issues will come before the High Court in the fall in what will be a major test of whether the conservative majority on the bench will uphold the president's authority. Anthony?
Jackson Proskow in Washington. Jackson, thank you. Now, as President Trump pursues his hardline immigration agenda, there is growing concern from health care providers about treatment for refugees and asylum seekers. Now, hundreds of people are in Halifax for an annual conference, of course, taking place against the backdrop of Trump's mass deportations and ICE raids. Heidi Petracek reports on the message attendees are preparing for the president.
According to the UN, 1 out of every 67 people in the world is displaced by global conflicts.
I have the right to be here.
And mass deportations and immigration raids are part of Trump's America, giving medical professionals who treat refugees, immigrants, and asylum seekers a lot to talk about at their annual conference.
Given what's happening in the United States, where refugees and migrants are under attack.
The impact even felt in this year's attendance, down 50%.
Many of them are not born in the United States, and they're afraid of coming to Canada and then having to cross back.
In 2001, I was still in England.
Dr. Omar Rida did come and knows what it's like to seek refuge. He fled Libya in 1996 during Muammar Gaddafi's rule and now works with trauma patients in Colorado.
Rather than only doing intervention, let us also talk about prevention. Rather than only prescribing Band-Aid, let us remove the reason people get injured.
He's seen state funding evaporate and worries about his family.
I am a U.S. citizen and they are also by birth. So hopefully that
constitutional right does not go away.
There was a rule that ICE immigration officials would not come to clinics and hospitals, but that rule is no longer in place.
Which means for the first time ever, this doctor talked with staff about what to do if ICE comes. And she knows some patients are staying away.
Somebody might say, I need to come and get my high blood pressure checked, but I really don't feel comfortable.
Conference organizers intend to draft a public declaration.
And it really will outline our support for migrants and refugees, and in particular, their right to health.
A message from those who care for the most vulnerable to governments around the world. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
An Israeli airstrike on an area where displaced Palestinians were sheltering in Gaza has reportedly killed at least 10 people. Gaza health officials say the attack targeted an apartment building and a school housing displaced people west of Gaza City. Rescue teams are still said to be searching through the rubble for more possible victims. Now, the strikes come as international condemnation grows towards the aid distribution system in Gaza. The chief of the UN's Palestinian Refugee Agency says the U.S. and Israeli-backed system has turned the enclave into a killing strip, resulting in hundreds of civilian deaths. Redmond Shannon reports on the outcry and the allegations that some of the killings may have been targeted. And a warning, some of the images are disturbing.
3-month-old Juri. Her life lived in a war zone under blockade and ended in excruciating starvation. A Palestinian reporter in Gaza said her family was unable to access the formula she needed.
Very concerningly, we're seeing now pregnant women and breastfeeding women coming to the clinic who are malnourished. It's really a very, very difficult situation here.
Rachel Cummings works with Save the Children in central Gaza. She says the US and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid hubs are chaotic and lethal. The United Nations says more than 400 people have been killed at or near them in the first month of their operation.
We've heard shocking reports of people being shot whilst waiting for the GHF to be opened, people being shot on their way to the distribution.
Israel has admitted its troops are responsible for some shootings near aid sites and says it is investigating. On Friday, the left-leaning Israeli Haaretz newspaper reported that soldiers had been given orders to shoot at civilians near the hubs.
We don't need a report of that nature to acknowledge that there have been massive violations of international law.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the report malicious lies intended to defame the IDF, the most moral army in the world. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation claims it has distributed 48 million meals in a month. Its boss, a former Trump advisor, has lashed out at the UN for refusing to cooperate with it. Johnny Moore told BBC News it is disinformation that people going to GHF sites are being killed.
The US said this week it will provide $30 million to GHF, but it is unclear where most of the group's funding comes from. Anthony?
Redmond Shannon in London, thank you. In northwest Pakistan, flash floods triggered by pre-monsoon season rains have killed at least 9 people. Several others are missing. Now, local authorities say a large family was taking pictures by the river when water levels rapidly rose, trapping them and sweeping them away. Heavy rain is forecast through the rest of the week as well, and monsoon season begins next month. Closer to home, police in North Vancouver are investigating a pair of explosions, including one outside the office of a provincial politician. The front door outside of Infrastructure Minister Bowen Ma's office was damaged in a blast just after 4 this morning. 2 hours earlier, police received reports of another loud bang, but so far haven't found any physical evidence of a second blast.
I don't know if it's politically motivated. We're not calling it that, but we're investigating all possible avenues at this point.
But we don't have any information about motive, but obviously this is profoundly concerning and troubling on a number of levels. The safety of her staff and her team and people in the other retail spaces in the mall where that office is located, as well as obviously her safety.
Police aren't saying what type of explosives were used. There were no reports of any injuries. Hoop dreams are over for the Toronto Raptors president. Coming up, the surprise over Masai Ujiri's departure. After 13 years on the job, Toronto Raptors president and vice chairman Masai Ujiri was fired. Ujiri leaves with an impressive resume. In 2019, the Raptors won the first major sports title in Canada since the early 90s. More recently, however, the Raptors have failed to even make the playoffs. As Jeff Semple reports, Ujiri's legacy is as impressive off the court as on it.
Masai Ujiri never played for the Toronto Raptors, but he was a superstar in his own right.
His legacy as of the present moment is as the best sports executive Toronto has ever had.
Ujiri's Toronto tenure was a Cinderella sports story. First hired as general manager in 2013 when the Raptors were on the wrong end of the standings.
They were a mess. They were a laughing stock. No one wanted to come to Toronto.
But Ujiri challenged those perceptions and transformed the team, drafting obscure players who became superstars and making major controversial trades, culminating in 2019.
This is what a Raptors championship celebration looks like.
We were in the champagne-soaked dressing room that night in Oakland.
Yeah. How does this moment feel for you right now, Masai? Yeah, it feels good.
And Ujiri, by then the team's president, promised a repeat.
And we'll win some more, a guarantee.
But alas, it wasn't meant to be. On Friday, the owners announced Ujiri's remarkable run was over.
Today's not an easy day, but as you know, change is never easy.
Since winning the championship in 2019, the Raptors have made the playoffs just once, and then losing in the first round. The club now in the midst of a rebuild. But Ujiri's legacy with the team goes far beyond the basketball court.
Ujiri spearheaded an extraordinary list of charitable endeavors, using basketball as a tool to empower youth in Toronto and in Africa.
He's a powerhouse, and he helps people see the better and the bigger in themselves.
Ujiri also diversified the Raptors front office, hiring more women and people of color.
He did a lot for the city, was a great GM.
This superfan, who's attended every Raptors home game and even received a championship ring, had this message.
From all the fans, on the behalf of them, I wish him all the best. And thank you, Masai. Once a Raptor, always a Raptor.
Jeff Semple, Global News, Toronto.
Now listen, LeBron, you don't have to worry. With me on the job, you're as safe as a penny in Boss Hogg's pot.
Ahead, a fond farewell to Dukes of Hazzard fan favorite Rick Hurst.
Jeff, how are you? How are you?
Amazon founder Jeff Bezos greeting onlookers in Venice today as his nuptials with Lauren Sanchez take over the city. The reported 200 wedding guests include high-profile names like Bill Gates, Oprah Winfrey, several Kardashians, Tom Brady, Usher, Ivanka Trump, and her husband Jared Kushner. The celebration, however, is drawing protests, with demonstrators concerned about the impact the event is having on Venice. The couple reportedly exchanged vows today, with their wedding reception said to be happening tomorrow. Well, beloved actor Rick Hurst, best known for his role in the hit comedy The Dukes of Hazzard, has died.
Deputy Cletus Hogg is running this town now, and when I say jump, I want everybody to jump.
Hurst played the lovable, bumbling Deputy Sheriff Cletus Hogg. He appeared in 55 episodes of the show from 1979 to 1982. Hurst is being remembered by co-stars as a fine actor and splendid comic. He died at his Los Angeles home on Thursday. Hurst was 79 years old. Step by step, next, pedestrians reclaim Winnipeg's landmark intersection. Winnipeggers are celebrating a historic reopening in the city's downtown core today. After nearly half a century, the landmark intersection of Portage and Maine is once again accessible to pedestrians, something that hasn't been possible since 1979. Melissa Ridgen was there for the grand reopening.
For the first time in 46 years, we can do this. Walk across Portage and Maine, and the novelty is not lost on Winnipeggers.
Portage and Maine has been the central intersection for Winnipeg's entire 151-year history. And even before that, I mean, it was really kind of a Métis ox cart trail, Red River ox cart trail for years, and a key passageway.
In the 1970s, though, city leaders approved a business development plan that envisioned that key passageway for vehicles only.
There was a 40-year agreement to close the intersection to at-grade pedestrians. Barriers were put up, and everything was driven underground to an underground concourse.
The $21 million reopening project was hotly debated by Winnipeggers, forced to happen by even more expensive repairs needed on the underground pedestrian path. While Portage and Maine might not be the most iconic intersection, it's inspired its share of songs from Randy Bachman and Neil Young
Winter nights are long, summer days are long, Portage and Maine 50 below,
to Stompin' Tom Connors.
Trying to get back to my field of grain, away from Portage Street and Maine, where I blew my mind and my money in vain.
It's also widely accepted as Canada's unofficial coldest intersection. A minus 30-degree day with a northerly wind funneling through the buildings is as close to hell freezing over as you'd ever want to be. But that's never stopped Winnipeggers from shutting it down.
This is a human rights issue!
Whether to revolt,
go Jets, go!
Or to rejoice.
Portage and Maine now enters its new era, social media icon. Anthony.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And that is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Anthony Robart. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Twillingate, Newfoundland and Labrador. Also a patriotic backyard in Regina, and in honor of Pride Month, this flag in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.